Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Waldman. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? Turns out I got a signal here from Justice that says we are not connecting for some strange reason to the to our internet stream this morning, and I don't think I can figure it out. Oh, no, now he says it's on. Okay, so terrific, wonderful, and so now we know exactly how that happened. Take note, engineers. That's great news. Okay, well, for whatever reason, a brief hiccup, and I guess we'll ignore it from this point forward. Okay, that's good news, because I was thinking, to hell with it. Let's all go back to bed. There's no real reason to go forward with this at this point, but okay, there really is. Lots of things happened over the weekend, and, maybe we should pay attention to some of those things. Greg Dworkin already preparing his stuff for this morning. Oh, I didn't tell you what day it was. In case you were wondering, it's not a rerun yet. It's Monday, October 22nd, 2018. We don't know what happened, but it's good to know that we don't know, because we like the uncertainty in our lives. Well, okay. These things happen with internet radio, and thankfully it cleared itself up because it's so smart, or something like that. We don't really know what's going on. I'll ignore the rest of it for now. Wild day here at Kagro in the Morning World headquarters. Not yet, but pretty soon. The kids are off. It's a fake holiday, teacher work day. It's not that they're awake yet, but they're supposed to be. And a big day for us here, wrapping up work on an Eagle Scout project and using the day off to finish up all the paperwork. Really probably shouldn't even be on the air, so that they could get up early and print things off and finish everything up and deliver those binders where they've got to go. But they're not up, and I didn't prepare a rerun, and I, forgot the whole thing. I mean, I knew we were going to be working like this in the morning, and quite honestly, if they're up and working seriously before we're off the air at 11, I'd be honestly quite surprised. Okay, so plenty to wrap up over the weekend. Another weird weekend. As I mentioned in the morning post, the Khashoggi timeline is clearing up a little bit. It doesn't mean it's any less dark. That just means we're able to make out shapes more distinctly in the darkness, I guess, is probably what I would say about it. The Saudis now sort of kind of admitting that Jamal Khashoggi is dead, that he was killed in their consulate by some people they brought there to kill him, but it was all some sort of horrible mistake. They got in a fist fight with him because that's the kind of guy Jamal Khashoggi was. I think he's in his 50s, they mentioned, and he walked into the embassy and picked a fight with 15 hitmen with a bone saw. That's the story. The body still unaccounted for, all kinds of stories being concocted. But the Saudi PR people are working overtime to try to figure out how they can possibly make concoct some sort of excuse that lets them get away with saying anything other than our de facto ruler ordered this hit, and it possibly was green-lighted by the White House, and they're casting about for anything that they can come up with, and it's not working so far, and everybody thinks it's ludicrous, except, of course, Donald Trump, who says, oh, yeah, totally plausible. I absolutely, positively believe their explanation, because, well, that's the kind of idiot he really is. However, he's not an idiot. He's a super genius, we learned over the weekend as well. Maggie Haberman and other super savvy top-level news reporters spent a good deal of the weekend on their theory that he was a secret genius, I guess like Jared Kushner, and that his particular genius, Donald Trump's, is uniting his base, and he says things that are outrageous, wrong, without basis in reality, and designed to be so moronic and irritating that they distract you from the real something, blah, 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 and that's supposed to be somehow super genius. I will tell you this, it's very irritating and distracts me from other things that I have to read, that New York Times reporters and others believe that counts as genius. Giving all the wrong answers to all the test questions and not caring whether they're right or wrong and then arguing that they're right even when people tell you that they're wrong, that doesn't strike me as being smart in any way. And it makes it difficult for me to take you seriously and to think you're smart if you tell me that you think, yeah, at bottom, Donald Trump is not dumb. I know you guys don't want to hear it. That was part of the discussion. I know you don't want to hear it, but the truth is he's very smart and he knows exactly what he's doing. And I don't think that that's true. And I don't think that there could be any evidence that could make it any clearer. But if he's really that dumb and really doesn't know what he's doing at all in any way, shape, or form and doesn't care, I suppose that diminishes a little bit what you do for a living if you're assigned to cover his every word and his every move as though it were legitimate and planned and well thought out and sane and worth listening to. If it's not, then I guess your job is worthless too, and I suppose you're never going to get it, just as Greg always tells us, right? When people's jobs depend on not getting it, they're not going to get it. I mean, he has a better way of saying it. And he's here. He can tell us about it. Good morning, Greg. How are you? Are you not here? I don't hear you. Why is that? Well, that's bad news. I wonder if this has anything to do with the other problem we were having. This is unusual. How can I possibly fix this? Well, let's see. Well, I can hear it when he hangs up. Anyway, all right, let's see. Missing audio device. All right, time out. Just a second. See if we can figure this out. That can't be right. The missing audio device. You know what? I realize now we did do an update of the software earlier today, and now I recall saying, should I do this? Because this doesn't seem like a good time to make this change. But, these updates usually work pretty well. It can't be that risky, right? And then I did it, and now I really regret it. And I wonder if that has anything to do with it. I wonder if I could call Greg and see if we can. I don't know why that would work any better. But if this doesn't work, I'll be out of luck. Let's see. How can we make this work? How would I rate this call? I would say, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a break. I will cancel that call. And let me try. What if I call Greg? Maybe that'll work. I don't know. We'll see. Greg, good morning. Are you there? Well, I still can't hear Greg, so let's see. I guess not. Well, that's bad news. Unless that's on Greg's end, that's going to cause an awful lot of problems. Okay, well, maybe you can type me a note and let me know if you can hear me. No? Well, we'll just say, okay, trying. I can hear you. Okay, well, let's see. All right, so that at least answers part of my question. If he can hear me and I can't hear him, is there a way I can change the engineering to make this work? Let's see. Where's the Skype? There's the Skype. Yeah, it goes in there. It's all supposedly all good. So, I don't know. That is most distressing, to say the least. Okay. Well, I'll have to give that some thought. In the meantime, I guess what we can do, if he tries again in a little bit, we can try and make that work. Let's see. And let's see, just by way of adding extra clues, Justice is saying he didn't hear the call tone that Skype makes when he calls. So that means Skype is piping its audio into my microphone, which is where my headphones come in. I haven't changed the configuration of any other things over the weekend, so I'm hearing the audio, but it's not exiting out, and that, I don't know. That's very odd, to say the very least. Okay, well, I will have to puzzle over that and see if we can make it work differently for tomorrow, although I guess I have tomorrow to make it work, as Greg won't be on the show. But that's most distressing, particularly as I would have been much more inclined to either pre-record or run a rerun today so I could help out with the work this morning if I didn't feel bad about depriving Greg of the opportunity to be on the air. But now that's not happening, and now I feel like I've wasted the opportunity. Well, okay. He has sent us a number of his stories, and we can at least review some of those to help you get the flavor, at least, of what was likely to come up. Of course, he begins off, as he always does, with his abbreviated pundit roundup. Well, sometimes that's the second or third message he sends. So let's take a look. Leading off his roundup, Will Bunch from Philadelphia Inquirer. Trump, Saudis, money, and a murder. We need a new Congress to find out what really happened. That's absolutely true. Can't doubt that. In early 2017, as the world was still processing the geopolitical earthquake that had been the ascension of Donald Trump to the American presidency, a high-ranking GOP congressman, California's Ed Royce, who chairs the House Foreign Relations Committee, rose to speak on the House floor. Royce's words about U.S. relations with Saudi Arabia entered the congressional record but barely made a ripple, except with his apparent audience, key shadowy players in the connected inner circles of the rising Saudi crown prince, MBS, Mr. Bonesaw, and of Donald Trump. Royce's obscure speech was celebrated in an email by Trump ally and fundraiser Elliot Broidy, who's super clean and on the up and up, as you know. At the time, newly minted deputy finance chair of the Republican National Committee, Broidy had just maxed out in campaign contributions to the California Republican and boasted it in his, let's try this one more time. All right, Greg, any difference this time?
I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
What'd you do?
No, I did literally nothing.
Okay.
So
I didn't do anything on my end. So just the vagaries of the internet. That's just how it works.
Well, maybe I'll go back and rate that call after all.
Maybe. All right. So
Wow,
I got a
this is
question.
good news.
Do you want to do election stuff or Khashoggi? Which is before the break? Which is after the break?
Well, let's try with Khashoggi, because I was just reading from your pundit roundup, abbreviated pundit roundup, and coming to the end of the selection about Ed Royce and Elliot Broidy.
Was that from the Will Bunch piece?
Yes, and so as it turns out, Broidy was, just to finish up this selection that you had chosen here,
Go right
had
ahead.
maxed out in campaign contributions to Royce, and then we found out in his later hacked emails that he had not only influenced Royce to make a policy flip toward the Saudis and away from their rival Qatar, but that he'd caused the congressman, that's in quotes, to mention a virtually unknown Saudi general in his address from the House floor. The world, by and large, didn't know anything about that Saudi. That's Major General Ahmed al-Asiri in early 2017. What is this all about? Nope. Any idea?
Not totally. I mean, just Will was writing about a really, complex web of stuff that was going on. What I've been focusing on is the collapse, and we talked about this on the show last week, the collapse of the Saudi PR effort in Washington. And they've just spent billions of dollars trying to paint themselves as a modern leaning monarchy moving boldly toward the 21st century.
Yeah, modern monarchy.
And it's all gone.
Yeah.
Here's a tweet from Michael Calderon, who is the senior media reporter at Politico. He says, Saudis have not only received widespread condemnation for killing a journalist and lying about it, but now facing heightened journalistic scrutiny over the war in Yemen, influence in D.C., and trying to stifle critics online. So that's not going well for them. That's not $1 billion well spent.
No, they're not good at that. That's true.
It's what he cites is he's citing a Politico story, but he's talking about Trump. You mentioned at the top of the hour, how Trump was like okay with it, but actually he's been all over the place. He told the reporters who were covering him on Friday that he thought the unbelievable explanation from the Saudis was credible. He told the Washington Post on Saturday that there's been deception and there's been lies. He's been ricocheting between seeming indifferent to warning about severe punishment to musing about rogue killers, and he didn't throw OJ in there, but he could have. And while he's been all over the map, Calderon notes, the Washington Post has been unequivocal. I mean, you can see the difference between the two organizations, if you will, the White House and the Washington Post. One of them has been resolute and one of them hasn't. But it's quite striking. And, of course, today's story is the that senior Turkish officials told CNN that the Saudis brought a Khashoggi body double as part of the deal. So Khashoggi walks in, and he doesn't walk out, but somebody else walks out who similarly built, except more hair, and wearing Khashoggi's clothes.
Is that right? I think I saw something about that this morning, and I missed the actual story, but didn't sound good if you're wearing his clothes.
Well, I have the story. I think it's in the lineup I gave you somewhere, but I'll just put it right here at the bottom so you can find it easily. Okay. It's a tweet which actually has pictures of Jamal Khashoggi and Mustafa al-Madani, who must be the unnamed vague Middle Eastern person that Trump tweeted this morning about in terms of being part of the caravan coming to take over your guns from Mexico. Yes. But the point is that the whole thing falls apart, and then the Turks also say that they have a recording of Mr. Bonesaw talking to Khashoggi just before he died. So the idea that MBS didn't know anything about it, falls apart there too.
MBS, he's there talking?
He was on
speakerphone?
It was a phone call.
Wow. So taking time out of his busy, almost kingly day.
But again, the Turks have all of this information, and they're releasing it drips and drabs, and the way that they're doing it is quite clever. They basically release whatever they have to undercut whatever is the Saudis just said 15 minutes ago.
That's... I don't know.
Instead of releasing it all on the first day.
Yeah, I guess. I can't decide whether that's like clever manipulation or like, okay, well, what do you have to say for yourself? All right, well, I say X, Y, Z. All right, well, that's a lie, and here's why. What else do you have to say?
That's exactly what they're doing. And it's not like they may not have planned this on day one, but the way it's rolling out, it's clearly a very effective strategy.
Well, that's the way it's supposed to be. Truth against the lies. Theoretically, the truth is supposed to win. And it's great to see because it's been, missing for a while. We missed you. It was terrific to hear you were back, Truth.
Yeah. It's fun watching actual, facts contradict the lies.
Yeah,
we
and
should
take
try
hold
that in this country.
I know. It's really, it's been a while, and I had just finished reading that lying wildly and without basis and transparently was genius, a special genius that could unite your base and keep you in power. So I was beginning to think maybe I should do that.
Well, more about that after the break when we talk about election results, especially the early election results from Nevada. But back to this Politico article here, perhaps even more damaging for the Saudi government than the condemnation from journalists is the heightened scrutiny it's receiving in the news media. The front page of Sunday's New York Times featured a piece on Saudi Arabia's admissible war in Yemen, which includes U.S. backing, as well as an investigation into how the Saudis deploy a swarm of online trolls to stifle critics. And the Washington Post published a deep dive Sunday night inside the Saudis' Washington influence machine. Okay. And the recent negative attention is a distant cry from the credulous coverage that Crown Prince Mr. Bonesaw, or MBS, had received from some prominent commentators. New York Times columnist Nick Kristof now suggests the Crown Prince initials stand for Mr. Bonesaw, like everybody else, and that having him lead the probe into Khashoggi's death is like appointing O.J. Simpson to investigate the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson. Yes. So if that's how it's going, then no.
Well, it has been rather amazing, of course, trotting out all of the old assessments of MBS, and plus a little analysis of, hey, seems like part of the PR campaign to even refer to him as MBS, like, hey, that's so familiar. We all like him because he's got initials, FDR, JFK, MBS.
Yeah, he's a smiley young man. Yeah. Just about the Crown Prince is just about the same age as our Clown Prince, Jared Kushner. Yeah. And it's just amazing that the things that they're doing doesn't work. For example, Kushner advised, according to stories, that all of this would blow over.
Yes.
And somehow it's not. And how could the hidden genius and the special genius there, or whatever his name is,
yes,
get together and come up with something that just doesn't turn out to be genius?
I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe it comes from believing or being told that his father's arrest would blow over.
The whole thing about how people act in the Middle East is somehow odd to Americans, and I'm not totally sure why. Everybody else in the world outside of us,
yes,
either runs their country based on realpolitik, or occasionally, as in Angela Merkel, with a little bit of moral compass. Mm-hmm. We used to do that, but we don't do that anymore. Yeah, no, not with boring. Trump. And so the idea that the Saudis, for example, and the Turks would be at odds over various and sundry things, be it the Kurds, be it who's the center of leadership there, all sorts of arguments about various and sundry things have happened. And the idea that the Turks and the Saudis would be dueling over what happened on Turkish soil, undercutting what the Saudis are saying, is like, oh my goodness, look at this happening. Who could have anticipated this? Of course, each country has their own interests, and they're not necessarily interests of the United States.
No.
So watching this play out as a bystander is pretty interesting, because basically it rips apart the whole PR construct that each country has, and tries to spend lots of PR dollars in the U.S. basically bamboozling American voters about who's doing what. They're both autocrats. The Saudi kingdom would like you to know that they're not fascists or authoritarians. They're merely monarchs.
Yes, right. The butterflies. Everyone loves those.
Forward-looking monarchs at that.
Right.
Trying to lead their country, into the 21st century. And by the way, if you don't start writing good stuff about us, our oil's going up to $200 a barrel.
Yeah, right. As pleasant people they are. It's interesting. And of course, now, this has nothing to do with it at all, I'm sure. I guess. I don't know. But it occurs to me as I'm thinking about a pitched battle between the Saudis and the Turks here, and thinking that control, leadership of what is known, I guess, or what passes for the greater Islamic world. I say what passes for only because it's like, well, it's not monolithic and it doesn't really work like that. But the central repository of Muslim power has sort of passed hundreds of years ago from the Turkish Empire to, I guess, located in or residing with the Saudi royal family, because the holy sites of Islam are in what is called Saudish Arabia now, and they have made themselves sort of the guardians of the faith there, where it used to be, of course, the Ottoman Empire so many hundreds of years ago. And it's just
right,
sort of
and a very important point, because the geography is everything there. Mecca and Medina are holy cities, whereas Istanbul, everybody knows, all sorts of nasty, criminal, thuggish stuff can happen in Istanbul. So that's the image they want to present.
Yeah, I guess that's what they would try to say. It's very Trumpish, in a way. I mean, it's certainly a more cosmopolitan
but that's
city.
The way it is, And so again, when that facade gets ripped down, it has implications.
All right. Well, I mean, there's nothing more thuggish, of course, than, say, decapitating people or dismembering them. But
that's pretty medieval, actually.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. That's rough stuff.
Well, it's as many people.
Ever been in a Saudi prison?
If you ever decide to kill me and then dismember me with a bone saw, just do me the favor of not wearing my clothes out of the crime scene, would you?
Right. Who wore it better, you might ask.
And of course, the whole implication of that is that they made him take his clothes off and then they killed him, and it wasn't a altercation started by him in rage, where it was a fist fight and then things just got out of hand after the fisticuffs. Well, if that's the case, where's the blood on the clothes? Well,
that's
aren't
true.
That's because he took his clothes off first.
Okay. Or they went to the dry cleaners.
He took his clothes off and then started a fist fight with 15 younger men who were part of the security detail. That really makes it sound like it's highly likely that such a thing would happen, right? I mean, what a great cover story. Jared must have come up with that
one. They brainstormed on WhatsApp for that. So
yeah.
I also note that MBS became a coffee boy over the weekend as well. Trump saying, Jared doesn't really even know the guy. They talked once or twice.
They just briefly dated, really weren't, engaged or anything like that.
Secret trips to Saudi Arabia, staying up. Remember the stories? We read them all. They stayed up till 4 a.m. talking about the world. And having heart-to-hearts every time, and but now I hardly knows him. Coffee boy, nothing to do with him. Low level.
Well, the other side of the coin is that there were dueling stories, one in Bloomberg and one in the Washington Post. The Washington Post saying, well, everybody's rallying behind MBS because, things are bad, but he represents stability. And the one in Bloomberg was, yes. Oh, my God, I can't believe this is happening to our country. This is horrible, and who could ever support something like that?
Oh, well, I like that one better.
I know, but, it's like, what part of this is actual reporting and what part of this is the PR machine?
Hard to tell.
It's hard to tell. Rand Paul, of all people, has called for MBS to step down. So Moscow must really think that it's not a good idea for him to be there, or that it's bad publicity.
I don't know. It's even that is hard to tell. And I guess it could be a Russian strategy to say, let's make the party in power in America look craven and out of touch.
No, well, I will say this, though. It does make it sound like the Senate is putting a lot of pressure on Trump to clean up his act and at least,
I hope so.
Not just say everything is totally credible.
I hope someone is finally telling him that, even though some reporters think it's a special genius for him not to.
That's the word I was looking for, special genius, as opposed to hidden genius.
Okay. Well, there's two.
Well, my clock says 9:27, so the break must be coming up. I don't hear the music.
Oh, well, I can assure you it is playing. This is another Skype problem that will have to clear itself up.
Okay.
Okay, so we have about 20 seconds till we actually exit, so we'll tell you.
After the break, we're going to talk election stuff.
Right, and that will happen.
You'll just have to tell me when we're back.
Right. Oh, that's true. Yeah. Okay, so more production nightmares to come. I hope the rest of you can hear the music, but I'm guessing that you can't. It's very nice, it's bouncy, and we'll be right back. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio, and it's too bad you're not hearing this fabulous musical transition that I hear, and I wish you could all hear what was in my head, but then I wouldn't have to do the radio show.
Right.
So
if I could hear what was in your head, I wouldn't have to talk to you.
That is true, and you probably wouldn't want to. So you never want to hear what's in somebody's head.
No, that's
It's very
true.
distracting, at the very least, even if it's all flattering and cheery. Just
right.
Okay.
But
all right.
I don't think it's necessarily suitable for home use right now.
Oh,
so I want to finish up with this Columbia Journalism Review story.
All right.
From Kyle Pope, who's looking at the media coverage of Khashoggi's murder, and just makes a simple but important point here. It's called "Why Trump Doesn't Care About Jamal Khashoggi," and basically makes the point he doesn't care because he's a reporter. But then goes on to say that we are covering it because we're journalists and he was.
Yeah, that's
right.
Pretty
so
basic.
Now that we know the truth, Trump couldn't care less about journalism, which means the dead journalist or the 5 who died in the Capitol Gazette newsroom earlier this year has no more or less value to him than anybody else. There's no symbolism here, no greater threat for those of us in this business. The situation is more dire than we thought. So if you're a journalist, you're going to cover the death of a journalist. And that's going to, matter.
I will take it. I mean, I think you should cover a lot of different deaths and do it easily, equally. But I guess I'll take what I can get. I guess I would also add, I think that Trump doesn't care about the death of Jamal Khashoggi because he's not Jamal Khashoggi.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
And plus he's not family.
Yeah. I mean, and I think I think family would change it. I did see late last week Eric Trump on the air somewhere, or I guess I should say I saw reports of his having been on the air somewhere trying to defend the family position. That would be his father, the president's position, and saying that, it was essentially, buying into at first the idea that maybe nothing had happened. But I did wonder whether he did say something like, well, he's just not the kind of person that we have to, worry about the disappearance of. And I was like, what kind of ridiculous statement is that to make? That he was basically, I think he was trying to jump in on board on the smears of Khashoggi, that he somehow deserved what he got. But it did make me wonder whether there was a part of Eric Trump and probably all the other Trumps that actually thought, well, he's just not a person that I care about or is worth worrying about. And I wondered, well, what kind of person would it take for the Saudis to murder for Eric, let's say, to care about it? Or let's say, for instance...
a great white hunter.
Yeah, like suppose they killed Eric, I guess. Do we gather that, well, Eric wouldn't be around to care.
Eric wouldn't care.
That's true. It wouldn't be.
Yeah, the question is, would Don Jr. care?
Yeah, or Don Sr. for that matter. What sort of person do you have to kill to make them upset? Oh, no, I remember what it was. He was parroting his dad's line about, well, okay, so they murdered him, but the point is they're buying a lot of weapons. It's a very valuable relationship. We're going to just throw that all away.
The evangelical moral position was, we got a lot of $100 billion worth of arms sales here. Let's not get distracted.
Right, I know. And suppose, on the other hand, had we sold them $100 billion worth of plowshares, I suppose that wouldn't have interested you?
Well, there's a lot of jobs in beating it into swords.
But here in this country, I wonder.
I don't know. Well,
that was it. He was parroting that line, and I was just, I wondered whether there was any death that he would agree to give up the relationship, i.e. the exchange of funds for. And I wondered truthfully, whether murdering Eric would make the president
probably
decide
make him
not to.
At least pause.
Yeah, right. Well, I'll tell you what. If you give the $100 million to the Donald Trump Foundation, then we'll think about it.
Yeah, $100 billion. I mean, we're talking a lot of money here. So, forecasting the race for the House, I'm looking this morning at 538, and they're actually up over 85% now, 85.1%, and the chance of the Republicans keeping the House is 14.9.
Yes, that's the other side of it.
And they're predicting anywhere between a 61-seat gain and a 19-seat gain for the Democrats, with an average gain of about 39 seats, which is just on the edge of what Chuck Todd over the weekend said would be a proper wave.
Oh, thank you.
On Meet the Press, he was making the point that, well, what if it's less than 40? Isn't that going to be a huge disappointment for Democrats? Like, if they only gain 37 seats, what are you talking about?
Yeah, huge.
Because the blue wave doesn't seem to be what everybody said it was going to be. And again, I have to go back to this point. There's like 70 races which are too close to call. Waves happen when you win more than your share of them. So of those 70 races, if you split, you get 35, and that would be enough for the Democrats to take the House. But if you get more than your share, it'll be more than that. And because they're razor thin and because they're close, you don't know before the election who's won what. So you can't even say there's a size of a wave until after the election. It's too close for you to know. Waves don't mean that you're crushing it everywhere, and therefore you could have told that 2 weeks in advance. And there's a very important reason for that, which I think is well worth highlighting, and that's this. We know Democrats are energized. We know that they're coming out to vote. Yes. John Della Volpe, who runs the Institute of Politics Millennial Poll, just tweeted this morning and said, let's make a friendly wager, Joe NBC, Mike Barnacle, Mike Allen, on youth turnout. Because on Morning Joe, they were saying that youth turnout always is disappointing and therefore don't even bother me with it. So Della Volpe says, you're right, 18 to 29-year-old turnout has been low or flat for generations, 16% in 2014, hasn't exceeded 21% since at least 86. Let's set the over-under at 23.5.
Okay. Sounds like a good bet.
So he's betting that the youth turnout's actually going to be up this year based on his polling of millennials.
I see.
Right? And if that happens, it winds up meaning that you do win a lot of those races. So the idea that the wave has disappeared is based on the following. We know that the Democrats are energized and are going to turn out, as I said. What makes it a catastrophe for Republicans is if their people don't show.
Yes.
That's the part of the equation we don't know yet. If you want to be a pessimist, think about 2004 John Kerry and Ohio.
Okay.
He hit his targets.
Yes, right.
He lost.
Yeah.
Because the other side hit their targets and they were higher than his. And he didn't know that.
Ah, yes.
Okay? So it isn't just a question of your guys turning out, it's the other guys turning out. So we look at, for example, early voting for the last couple of days in Nevada. And this is being followed by John Ralston. And Washoe County, the second largest, where Reno is, the Dems are killing it. I mean, they're like 14 points ahead in what's traditionally a +2 Republican area.
Okay.
That, you don't know how they voted, but you know what party is turning out to vote.
Yes.
Okay, and so you don't know how the independents are going to break either. But those are great numbers for Democrats. In Clark County, which is the biggest, Democrats are also winning. They actually did quite well on day one, but not quite as well on day two. 4 years ago, when the Republicans did well, it was basically tied in Clark County for Republicans, which is unusual. It's a Democratic stronghold, and that gave you a clue that Republicans were going to do well in that election. This year, the Democrats are winning.
Which they should.
They are 1% above their registered numbers, and Republicans are 6% above their registered numbers. There are more Democrats than Republicans, therefore Democrats lead. And Ralston was making the point that Republicans always turn out for these elections, and they look like they are turning out. But if you have many more Democrats than Republicans in these areas, the Democrats will win. And that makes two separate points. It was a Sunday. It's only the second day. You have to see, how this is going to be sustained and so on and so forth. By Wednesday, we'll have a better idea. And Obama's going there to juice the Democratic numbers this week, and maybe even today. I forgot what day he's going to be there, but early in the week. But the point is that it's not that the Republicans are staying home. They're not.
Okay.
And as long as they're not staying home, you're not going to get these huge numbers in favor of Democrats. That's not how it works. It's a typical election in the sense that Republicans will turn out. They'll turn out slightly higher than their numbers. They're older. They tend to vote regularly. And then the Democrats have to pull voters who don't normally vote Democrat in order to match those numbers. Del Volpe says they are, or they will. That's his bet. And the raw numbers in Nevada say that for the most part they are, but we have to see whether or not this is going to be sustained. And again, if you look at the Florida vote by mail numbers, Republicans are winning by about 5%, but normally they win by about 11 or 12%. Those are good tidings for the Democrats, but not proof of anything. All the things are lining up there for Democratic wins, but they're going to be close wins. And because they're going to be close wins, it's hard to see in advance that they're happening, and therefore your predictions of whether the wave is there or not there are based on stuff you don't know yet, and that's why it's so much hot air.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense.
I think so. Armando adds on the sidelines here a Siena poll of the 19th district in New York, showing Faso 44, Delgado 43, and pointing out, I think, making the same point as you in a wave.
That's a great example.
We win. Yeah.
That's the kind of seat that you win in a wave that you don't normally win. It's a Republican area.
Right. And so.
And there's close races. Peter King has a close race in Long Island. That almost never happens.
It's about time. That's true.
And all of the Senate races that we're talking about that we keep such a close eye on that are basically tied, like Missouri, are happening in what are arguably pinkish, reddish, or deep red areas.
Yeah.
So to keep it close in those areas is certainly, good tidings in terms of Democrats. Of course, you have to, get across the finish line and produce something. So looking at the House and Senate separately, the House still looks, like a good chance for a pickup. And what we don't know is the size. The Senate it was interesting because I would say a month ago, it looked like there might be a chance for the Democrats to pick up the Senate. Mm-hmm. A week to 2 weeks ago, it looked like that was impossible. Now, I would say it's still unlikely, but there are places like Arizona, Nevada, looking at these numbers, that might show some hidden Democratic strength depending upon who turns out. I think North Dakota is still a really, really tough race for us to win, so I'm figuring we lose that one. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure at all what's happening in Tennessee. Conflicting polls, one of them actually showed Bredesen on top. Rosen's like Delgado. She's trailing Heller by 1 or 2 points. But depending upon who turns out, that's an overcomable number. And Nevada's traditionally a very, very difficult place to poll. And it's really hard to know exactly what's going on in Arizona. McSally's closing argument is that Sinema is a traitor. And Republicans are clapping themselves on the back for what a clever closing argument, but I'm not sure that that works. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. And it looks like the latest poll from Florida, for example, from CNN, has Gillum up by 12 for governor, but Nelson up by 5 for Senate. So we may wind up holding serve in a lot of places, and Republicans may pick up a seat. We may keep it where it is. I think in the best scenario for Democrats, maybe it's a 50-50 Senate. All of that's possible. And as Armando pointed out on Twitter this morning, if the Democrats even hold where they are right now, let alone take the Senate, that's a tremendous loss for Republicans.
I guess
a cataclysmic loss, given what their expectations are.
Yeah, not that they will own up to that. They'll simply point at the bottom line and say, well...
Right. If the Democrats win the House, that was expected. If the Republicans hold serve and it's a 51-49 Republican Senate, that's a disaster for them. They were expecting to pick up 2 or 3 or 4 seats, or as high as 57.
Not that they'll ever own up to it. They'll instead say, look, the bottom line is we won.
Yep.
Just like we said we would.
Difference between the parties right there, and difference with expectation settings, which is what the media does without really knowing what's going on. And that's why I find all this discussion about a wave so annoying. You can't know now. Waves are something you talk about after the election, not before. There's just too many close races that make it a wave or not make it a wave.
But it's so exciting to talk about waves, I think.
Well, what is exciting is the fact that people are turning out and people are voting. The voting numbers are up everywhere. And I think somebody made the point that, Monmouth, for example, and CNN New York Times polling actually these days puts out several different models, the low turnout, the average turnout, the high turnout. Go with the high turnout numbers in these polls, folks, because people are voting and the turnout's going to be pretty darn good. It's like 3 times normal in Nevada for the first couple of days.
Weird state with their voting, Nevada. But
again, all the people live in Clark County. It's all concentrated around Las Vegas. The rest is desert, And then Washoe is the second biggest. And then there's all these rural Republican counties where they're going to run up numbers, but there aren't enough people there to make up for a big, big showing in Clark County. So what you have to do is you have to run up the numbers in Las Vegas and Reno and then hope that's enough to win against the rural areas.
I once ran up the numbers in Reno.
And then they ran right back down.
Yeah, well, that can happen.
Those things tend to happen.
Let's see. Also, Armando pointing out that a 51-49 Senate
is he available
Republicans.
To come on?
Well, I don't know whether that's the case. He's available to type annoying notes at us. So we can invite him to.
Well, there was the Gillum
let me see.
DeSantis debate last night on CNN. A lot going on in Florida, and of course, election stuff overall. So I just wonder if he could grant some time and talk to you about that.
Let's see.
Not necessarily while I'm on.
Oh, okay.
It's easier technically. It's great if he is, while I'm on. But
we'll see. Yeah, he says okay. So let's see. Let me see if I can engineer that happening. I could barely get you on the air, but let's see.
Let's pretend all those problems are fixed.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Which one of these buttons do we think it's going to be? This one? Add people
the big
to the
red one that says "Don't touch."
Yeah. I think I just did that one.
A nuclear strike against North Korea.
Okay. Let's see. If that's add people to the call and I press it, then why would
that's
it
the one that gets
away?
you a Diet Coke delivered to your.
I think that might be right. All right. Let's try this. Well, I'll give him a call and see whether. We'll find out whether that works or not. Let's see.
I hear
any
something.
noise? Okay, here we go. Let's see. Armando.
Yeah, I'm on.
Hey.
Yay.
Okay.
How are you?
Hey, guys.
Now,
Did you see the debate on CNN last night?
I did watch. I wasn't going to watch it, but then it was on, and I started watching it. And
So tell us
Gillum was fantastic.
So what was on? What happened? I missed everything. Oh.
Well, Andrew Gillum debated Ron DeSantis on CNN. Jake Tapper moderated. They are the candidates for governor of Florida. Just that same day, as Greg had pointed out, CNN released a poll where Gillum's up by 12. I'll give you a news flash. Gillum isn't up 12. Nobody's ever up 12 in Florida. That's just not how it works.
No.
So,
but he has been ahead in every poll, even by 1 or 2.
I think he's ahead. He may be ahead 4 or 5. And listen, being up ahead 4 or 5 is that's like a landslide in Florida. Mm-hmm. The better number, or the more interesting number, is Nelson. If he's up at all, I'm pleased. I think he's run a terrible campaign, but
that was a +5 for Nelson in that poll.
Right. Well, let me tell you what Gillum did that I think people should take note of. I thought it was, if you want to hear my thoughts on that debate, if you didn't see it, Greg, I don't know if you saw it.
I did.
I thought 2 things were noteworthy about Gillum's performance. Number one, he was tough.
Yeah.
Tough.
The
tough
things, he had a great opening, he had a great middle, and he had a terrific close, better than anybody I've ever seen.
All those things are true, but I thought the interaction in the debate was still the most noteworthy thing. I mean, when DeSantis tried to go at him, Gillum had 2 things to slap him around with, and he ridiculed them in an effective way. He was very personable as well. He connected with the audience, it felt like to me.
Yep.
He was just the guy you'd rather have a beer with, give you that context. But he was also the guy who knew much more than the other guy, and he was also the guy who effectively made fun of the other guy and demonstrated that he was a liar. But most importantly, and this is something I think was the other most noteworthy thing about the debate, Greg, and I don't know if you agree with me on this. He was not afraid to take on Trump. He brought up Trump. He talked about this guy being about Trump.
And the racism, those 2 points. Those 2 points. He just went back at DeSantis and said, look, you're a racist. You brought up racist stuff. We all know this. I mean, this isn't even debatable. Let's deal with it. And he did the same with Trump. What you're doing is Trumpian. You've attached yourself to him, and it's bad for Florida. Florida needs people who's going to care about Florida, not somebody who's going to, what did he say, worship at Trump's feet?
Exactly.
I mean, it was tough. It was hard. DeSantis was so uncomfortable. It's almost like DeSantis didn't know there was going to be a split screen watching him while Gillum was talking.
That's true. And let me tell you, the DeSantis has a special problem. For those who don't know, DeSantis ran as the Trump lackey in the Republican primary. He basically had spent a year on Fox talking up Trump. Trump saw him and decided, you're my guy. And frankly, in my view, the more electable candidate for them was Adam Putnam, who is, yes, owned by business interests and sugar and all that stuff.
But it's a standard Republican.
Yeah, he's a standard Florida Republican, which generally is a pretty good place to be in Florida. We don't win statewide races. The last time we won the governorship was in 1994. Lawton Childs beat Jeb Bush that year in a very close race. But he got it by, and we have not won the governorship. We don't hold any of the houses of the legislature. This election for Floridians is hugely important, not just for redistricting, not just because being the governor of Florida. The governor of Florida is incredibly powerful. It's a very strong governor situation. They have a lot of emergency powers. Just one example. Rick Scott, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, in case of national emergency, like Trump was saying this morning.
In case of a state emergency, he gets to do things like, here's what he did, which was frankly beneficial to himself, but I can't criticize it because it's the right thing to do in terms of getting people right to vote. He extended the early voting period for the Panhandle till Election Day. Normally it ends a week before. And the reason he did is obvious. They've gone through a hurricane. Everything's a mess there. And we're seeing that in ballot returns by mail. The Panhandle is way behind what should be its targets. They clearly, to be fair to them, they should have more time to vote. I think that's not unfair.
No,
but if
totally.
but if it was South Florida, Rick Scott would not be extending early voting. Let's put it that way.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a very important race. And another thing that came down just last week, the Supreme Court of Florida ruled that Rick Scott's attempt to name the replacements to 3 terms that are ending the same day his term ends, he doesn't get to name replacements the day after his own term expires.
It'll be his successor.
It'll be his successor. So that's hugely important for Florida. It's going to be hugely important for the country because this is redistricting time, and there's going to be fights about it, and the Supreme Court of Florida is going to have a lot to say. We have a fair redistricting mandate in the Constitution of Florida. The Supreme Court Florida gets to review the districting now. That's something that came up this decade, so we haven't actually applied it to redistricting yet. So the makeup of the Supreme Court of Florida is not only hugely important to Florida, it's hugely important to control of the House. Remember, there are 27 congressional districts. They'll go to 29 after the next census is what people think. And if you can gerrymander 4 or 5 seats one way or the other, that's a plus 10. 10 seats can mean the control of the Congress. So it's perhaps the most important non-federal race in the country, in my view. And of course, I'm a Floridian, so I would say that, but I think it's important to everybody.
I think good round.
I like the race in Wisconsin for governor there too. But yeah, absolutely, it's vital.
Well, I will tell you why Florida is more important than Wisconsin, because 29 is more than 11.
That's true.
Well,
what? Yes.
The important one is the one you win, right? I'd rather have the 11 that I win than the 29 that I lose.
I'd rather win the 29 and let you win the 11, because then I'm plus 18.
Yeah, if you can do that, if you're going to.
But I think we're going to win them both. I think Walker is going to lose.
Yeah,
I think it's enough.
So
and
again,
there's a time, even for popular governors like Cuomo, Mario Cuomo in 1994 when Pataki beat him. It was enough.
Yeah, this is the time, 2 weeks before the election, where you get all of the narrative stories about Republican comeback and this and that and everything else. As the partisans in the party typically come home, it's almost expected, but so are the narratives. And yet none of that really means much of anything. This election,
but it didn't really happen yet. That was actually my problem.
The one place where you could see it is the NBC Wall Street Journal poll, where you have women still 25 points favoring Democrats, but now you have men 14 points favoring Republicans. The only place that's happened is the only place that Trump can go to for support, which is non-college white men.
I had sent you guys a message that this morning about I was riffing off of David's discussion of Haberman's "he's a genius" stuff, and it said I don't think he's a genius at all. I think he can get bigger margins in those rural deep red districts. So now instead of winning by 8, they'll win by 15 type thing. I think for once the gerrymandering kind of works in our favor. Trump is killing the Republicans with white college educated, particularly white college educated women. Yep. That's the swing voter of this election. I mean, it's be great. We're worried about turnout with Latinos, but the Latinos are going to turn out. And you can look at the NBC poll. It's 66-26 for Democrats.
Same as the kids. The youth vote also. They're going to turn out.
Yeah, it's a question of how much they turn out. It's not like they're going to vote for Republicans. So that the variable is turnout there. I think African American turnout will be high. It always is our most reliable voters. The white college women voters swinging from basically a tie.
It's now Democrats by 33 in that poll.
Can you imagine? That's huge. And that's why what's crazy is you took at this NBC poll and you say, well, Trump's approval moved to 45. By the way, the NBC poll has had Trump over 40 the whole time. He was at 43.
Right.
This could just be noise if you want to know. This is not a poll that has had Trump in the 30s. I don't think once has the NBC poll had Trump in the 30s. It's somewhat like the Daily Kos poll. I don't know if you guys follow the Civitas poll.
Very closely. It basically doesn't move.
They've had Trump between 42 and 44 for a year and a half now.
Yep.
NBC's had Trump between 41
by the way,
and
no
45.
evidence of a Kavanaugh bump.
Yeah,
Unwhatsoever.
I've always been skeptical of the Kavanaugh bump theory. I'm very unskeptical. In fact, I'm very thinking it's dispositive of what, and I think Gillum, I'll go back to Gillum at this point, white college-educated women. What does Trump being the driver of the electorate mean with white college-educated women?
It means Virginia 2017. It means you thought that it was going to be a relatively close race, and it turns out there's a few extra points for the Democrats you're not seeing.
Right. I mean, I think there's a few seats that they think are competitive that might not be. I'm talking suburban districts. I'm talking about the districts around the urban centers. I'm talking outside Miami,
New Jersey,
outside Philadelphia, Virginia, California, Southern California. I think the more Trump is out there, the more seats we win. Because I know people say, oh, well, look at Minnesota 8, I believe is the one that we've held miraculously. Look, it cuts against us in another way. I mean, Hyde probably is dead. I get that.
Coming up on our break now, by the way. She was
probably dead anyway.
Yeah,
probably true.
It's likely to happen. Coming up on our break.
Yeah, we're only about.
So I'm going to say goodbye, but I think that's pretty much it. As John Hardwood said, white men without college degree plus 42 Republicans, white women college degrees plus 33, Latinos plus 40, African Americans plus 70. Those latter numbers for the Democrats. So it's white men without college degrees against the rest of the country. And again, it's a question of who turns out.
Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Again, too bad if you missed out on the wonderful and bouncy music. Still haven't figured out what button to press for that, but hopefully things will fix themselves at some point. Armando, I believe, still with us, yes?
I am right here.
Okay, excellent. So you had a request on the way out the door from Greg with regard to outcome of the Florida elections and whether it was...
And I'll give you context for his question because he knows that it was a surprise to me the way that election turned out.
That was the
2016 election in Florida had record turnout. People talk about turnout being that or people not being enthusiastic about their candidates. In Florida, there was the reverse. We had just a turnout that was unprecedented. And it was unprecedented in two ways. I know people thought Hillary Clinton was uninspiring, but she won South Florida, Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties by 200,000 more votes than Barack Obama did when he won over Mitt Romney by a sliver in 2012. Mm-hmm. So you're asking yourself, well, how did he lose? How did she lose when she had a 200,000 vote cushion? Because Donald Trump drove white, no college voters out in a way that we've never seen in exurbs and in the Panhandle. The margins he won in Pasco County, for example, was a third of his total victory. He won by about 100,000 votes, and he won Pasco by 35. Obama had lost Pasco by about 12. So the question is that going to happen again? Is the vote from white, no college in Florida going to be through the roof? Is it going to swamp our victories and our margins in South Florida? Look, anything is possible, but the Panhandle went through the hurricane, and as much as you're going to bounce back, voting is going to be a little lower there, even if you extend voting hours. Mm-hmm. And that's just going to happen. It could be 10, or it might be 20, it might be 30,000 less votes out of there for Rick Scott and for Ron DeSantis, but it's going to happen. But they could still win if they match everything else, and it's possible. But again, midterm elections have less turnout than presidential generally. So the question is their turnout going to be lower than ours relative to the previous election? And I think the answer is yes. Donald Trump doesn't inspire these people to vote, and he does inspire them to vote when he's there, I suppose. But the issue of whether he's even going to show up to Florida, because the downside is what I've just talked about, is an open question. Rick Scott doesn't want him to. I don't know what Ron DeSantis wants at this point, but we will see. So is it going to happen? I guess it could happen. I think it's less likely to happen. And I think the polling that shows Gillum up is indicative that, at least in terms of the polling, that turnout is not going to be what he expected.
All right. Let's see. So I've got, what's this from Greg here? Just sent us from out of Texas. Pictures from early voting beginning there, and the line to get in already up to 2,000 people, 5 minutes ahead of the, I don't know, they don't have an opening bell, obviously, but everybody lining up for early voting in Texas. And a reminder to anybody who can cast their ballot early, probably a wise thing to do. I think Brandon Friedman tweeting this morning, reminding everybody that for everyone who votes early, you are one less person ahead of somebody frustrated in line on Election Day who can only get there on Election Day, and you make it that much easier for them to get in and vote. And I think that's a wise point to make. And also, by the way, just to sort of cap all of this for places to look for election surprises, our friend and listener Mad Hatter saying take a look at Texas 22 for a big surprise. Heavily diverse, highly educated, and here we find a candidate, Sri Kulkarni, could shock Pete Olson. And is he the one we've been hearing about so much in the last couple of days about his granular level of organization in the district? I guess I'll have to pose that question. May have to pose that question to Mad Hatter rather than to you, Armando. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I actually don't know the answer to that question.
But I had just seen that there was a candidate recently in Texas who had thrown himself so wholeheartedly into targeting and organizing his community that there were some good things expected to possibly come from that, and a real shocker in the making. So if it happens, Mad Hatter, you're on the record for Texas 22. You get to collect the bonus points on that one.
Yeah, all right. And I'd like to just remind everybody in Florida that early voting starts in Florida today. So if you are there,
all right,
don't be online on Election Day. Be online today. They'll be shorter the lines, so you'll save yourself the trouble. I am going to go down and try to vote this weekend early in Florida. As people may or may not know, I split my time between New York and Florida, but I am a Florida resident, and therefore my vote is more powerful because New York is the blue state, and there's not many elections here that I would impact. I have slightly more impact. Sometimes I suppress votes by not taking my parents who are Republicans to the voting place. But I'm kidding. I take them if they want. I don't remind them the day when it's election day.
It's up to you. I'm just saying.
They say, "Why are you going to do that?" But also, I try to encourage other Democrats to vote.
You send them I'm
able to do that.
Movie reviews and things. Yeah, okay. Well, we've been. I've done it a couple of times here. They don't make it all that easy to vote early in Virginia, but it's not as easy as it is in some places.
It's a normal election day with all the poll watchers, and they have the nice machines. Florida actually has, I would argue, one of the better systems now. It creates a paper trail.
That's good.
You fill out your ballot, and they run it through this scan machine, but they keep the paper ballot itself. If there's ever a recount, you can go back to the paper ballots and see and count the actual votes. And it's no more punch cards or anything like that. It's basically a sample ballot, where you bubble it in, and people will see your bubble, and it's really hard for people to be confused about what your intent was. So if Florida had that system in 2000, I swear to God, Al Gore would have been president.
That's very possibly true. Now, had they had that election, you would have found out how many people, because Florida has a lot of people. Yeah, just in terms of raw numbers, how many people actually can either grow confused over it or confuse the vote counters, even with those bubbles. Of course, I'm just thinking about the last time around in Virginia when control of the legislature came down to one race that had been decided by one vote, and they had convened a judge and convening a panel, and they're all puzzling over what the 5, 6, 10 ballots mean when people are, how it is, the Scantron sheets. If you've gone to school in the last 40 years,
ballot that sort of had one thing was marked in, but then it was crossed
out. Is the X through a filled-in bubble I filled that one in by mistake, or is that an X to say, that is definitely, I'm voting almost, if I could, twice for this person?
I remember that ballot, and I know the Florida ballot is very similar, David, and I got to be honest with you, and this may be not the Democratic position. If you can't fill out that ballot correctly, your vote on that race should not be counted.
Well, it is. So
it's not that hard.
It's not hard.
It was hard with the little punch cards. Did the punch go through enough? The dimpled Chad and all that. That was a machine disaster.
Well, it was a dumb thing to have at this late date. I mean, what, punch cards? That hasn't been used since the 60s. That was 18 years ago.
I don't think, at least, I don't know if New York still has the punch cards. I think they still might have them in some districts. But Florida does not.
Yeah.
Florida has the nice big ballot. It's impossible to mess up, frankly. If you read it closely after you finish, you can see that I make any unnecessary smudges. It takes an extra minute, and they put it through. They have a paper trail. Florida does a lot of things wrong, but the actual casting the ballot is done very well.
The ballot is
what they do wrong
better.
is the ID.
Right. Oh, well, that's true. That's a problem also. It is amazing, though, how often people screw up the simplest things, or you get, fill in the bubble next to the candidates you want, and people write instead, this is the guy I want.
Well, if they did that,
you can't do that.
in a recount, I'll have to count that. Don't get me wrong. If I can really discern the intent of your vote, I think you have to count it.
Yeah, it's just funny when people stand there and say, I know that's what he wanted, but you're supposed to fill in, and that's not hard. And
that's not what I'm saying. I'm thinking that one ballot.
No, not you, but I do see these people do this.
Didn't write this is the one I want, and point with an arrow.
No, but had he,
I would have said he just, he didn't do it right, but you know who he wanted to vote for.
But you always, I'm just saying, you end up in the courtroom there for an hour anyway, because the other guy is getting paid to say the opposite, so he has to say something. So he stands there and says, I know that he wrote, this is the guy I want to vote for, I swear to God, and I stacked up 3 Bibles, and he signed it and put a picture of himself signing it. Right.
It shouldn't count.
Yeah.
If he really wanted to, he would have followed the rules and done it right.
Well, and it's interesting, and sometimes it works because, you say, well, look at the rest of our election law. Everywhere else in our election law, for the law about whether or not you're allowed to get in the front door and be handed one of these ballots in some states says there can't be any mistakes on your registration. I mean, that's actually a voter suppression technique that's happening. Where did we just read this about? In
the exact
Georgia.
Same stuff in Georgia.
Yeah. Right, and where they're purging people like crazy. And I understand they're something like 6% of the total population of Georgia has been purged from the voter rolls in the last couple of weeks.
That's just voter suppression.
Yes, but I mean, you will find that there are people will be in the courtrooms arguing, look, the heart of our election, the protection laws for our elections are all about make no mistakes, and we make it as easy as possible not to make any mistakes. If you still make them, we got to draw the line somewhere. Now, hopefully that's not persuasive in the case of someone who has written, I swear to God, I meant to vote for Smith. I just can't find the bubble. Please count my vote for Smith.
It depends on the state law. Florida has both expansive jurisprudence and in the law itself that when you can discern the intent of the voter in a recount, you count the vote.
Okay.
That's the paramount issue. And you might remember that from Bush v. Gore. The Supreme Court decided that the court intervening was changing the election laws, even though the election laws actually contemplated and provided for the court being the election judge, so to speak. So, listen, let's not rehash Bush v. Gore because that was a stolen election.
And you're not allowed to rehash Bush v. Gore. It says right in it.
It says it right there. This is a one-time only.
Sorry, got to follow the rules, as you know. So, can't do it. I have a note here from Greg, but it's not attached to anything. Probably not true, says Mike McDonald, but I don't know what he's saying. It's probably not true. Maybe the things about Georgia? I don't know. We'll have to find out.
No, McDonald's actually been very sounding the alarm on Georgia. That would surprise me that he would say.
Well, maybe the specific number of the 6% or the, I don't know. Well, we'll find out.
I don't know. If it's 306,000, that sounds like at least 6%. I mean, how many people live in Georgia? 10 million now?
Well, I guess. So here's the answer here. Mike McDonald replying to Elect Project and saying, another important point, when we won the 2016 lawsuit, Kemp entered an agreement that no one can be prevented from voting for failure to match for 26 months, which covers the 2018 election. I see what you mean. No one can be denied an opportunity to vote in this election for an exact match failure. What that means is if you know about that and you show up and they say, sorry, you can't vote because it's not an exact match, you're supposed to say, no, when the election lawsuit in 2016 was decided, Kemp entered into an agreement that no one can be prevented from voting for a failure to match for 26 months, which covers this election, so therefore let me in. And they say, I actually am not going to. And then you say, but I want to, and then they have the police escort you out. Then you can go sue and make people feel bad later for having lost your right to vote. So that's the cold comfort.
I believe they are to be permitted to cast provisional ballots, but I don't know that a consent decree matters. I do know that there was. I mean,
those are the things you would say, and then they hit you over the head.
There was a suit about exact match. There was some type of consent decree. I have to admit that I am not well versed on what that means. In terms of what was in the consent decree.
Yeah, I can take the word here from Mike McDonald that's I believe that's the way the lawsuit was settled. I mean, it may turn out that I haven't read enough to do that.
He was an expert witness in the case.
But just the reality, of course, on the ground is often very different, and we see this all the time. You start arguing the law, unless you're arguing the law with a cop because you're open carrying a weapon. The argument usually ends with you in handcuffs and no provisional ballot. And if you're lucky and an ACLU lawyer is there and sees it, then it starts with you in handcuffs and ends with you at 10 p.m. being released and being given a provisional ballot. So spend the day in jail very often when you assert your rights and are correct. But you should do so anyway, I guess, is an easy thing for me to say from the comfort of my own home. But what else are you going to do? You don't give in to it. But important point to be made, and perhaps 6 times out of 10, you'll be able to convince a poll worker on the ground without appealing to anybody else or making a scene or spending 3 to 4 hours at the polling place. You'll be able to convince them that it's true and that you should at least get a provisional ballot, and good luck to you. That's how the voter suppression game works. It doesn't have to be 100% effective. If it just takes you an extra couple of hours to convince people to vote, just like calling your insurance company and saying, I'm having this procedure, or I want to get that done, or I need this medication. and the person on the phone just says, yeah, that's not covered. If you go away, terrific. Your vote has been suppressed. If you argue with them and demand to talk to a supervisor, and the supervisor also tells you to go screw yourself, and you hang up an hour later, that's still a win for them. If you fight and fight and fight and finally get your provisional ballot or finally get your coverage from your insurer, okay, well, we were expecting that to happen anyway. But in the meantime, 6 people left the line waiting for you. The obnoxious guy up front who can't just take his ballot and go has ruined it for the rest of us. So
no, it's clearly more voter suppression. Anyway, You want to hear the most infuriating thing in the world?
I guess I'd better.
Okay, this is Maggie Haberman reporting on a Citizen by CNN event where Van Jones is interviewing Jared Kushner. First question Van Jones has for Jared Kushner. And I quote, "How did you get this job? You have like the dopest job in the world, the secretary of everything. How did you wind up in this position?" Van Jones asked that question.
Okay. I can see it being an all right question, like in terms of like, my version of it is, how did you get this job? You're like the biggest dope in the world. Why are you here?
Do we have any idea why he got this job? Well, let's see. Who did he marry exactly?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he was trying to
marry the boss's daughter. This is not actually.
Well, I assume that he was trying to say, well, what do you tell yourself in the mirror about why you got this job?
Full disclosure, I despise Van Jones, so you have to take my take on this with that grain of salt.
I am not a huge fan of the way he approaches things, to say the least. Although I've liked some of the things he's done, and I guess he's a nice enough guy. I mean, but whatever. I think lately he's been kind of it's pretty obvious he's been kind of a huge disappointment in terms of his soft hands approach to so many things, and I could see why when you're reading this question you're not seeing it like I my guess is that he's thinking in his head, Van, I would like to know what excuse he offers when everyone knows how he got the job. I'm just sort of curious, given the opportunity to do PR for yourself, Jared, what sorts of lies do you tell yourself about why you have this job other than, well, I married the boss's daughter and that's that? I mean, unless you'd like to admit to that. Go ahead.
But that's why he has the job.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing about anything Jared Kushner has done in his life that qualifies him for anything.
But I could ask the same
at all, really. I mean, I guess
a good way to ask that question.
Running the family crime
organization.
It's
actually, I didn't. But again, if you'd like to confess to that, that's fine. I guess. I mean, 2 ways of asking the question: Van's way, or you could say, "I'm curious. So, how did you get this job?" And then point the microphone at him, and then just pull it right back and say, "I'm just kidding. We all know how you got this job."
I'm just kidding. I know how you got this job.
You're the boss's. You married the boss's daughter, and then your follow-up. Well, to the extent that the Trump administration is just the continuance of the familial, the family's crime enterprise, I could see that you're maybe semi-qualified for that, although you've been doing a terrible job. If you were great at stealing money, you wouldn't be $1 billion in debt.
He does have experience, is what I'm saying.
Yes, I guess so. Right. That's it. The prisons are full of experienced criminals.
The other thing is Van Jones said, which is kind of funny. He says, most people don't know that one of your family members went to jail.
Yeah.
A lot of people actually do know his father went to jail, and we know why he went to jail. But and Chris Christie put him in jail, and that's why Chris Christie was shut out of the Trump administration.
Yeah, well, that's becoming clearer these days.
We sort of know that.
We knew it, but I guess for a while we were supposed to maybe forget it and like, it's possible some other falling out kept Christie out of the administration. But now we're seeing just,
I think it's pretty clear it was because he put Jared's dad in jail.
I think so. I was wondering earlier in the show when Greg was talking about Jared's relationship with the Saudis, and just wondering whether, maybe the idea of the Saudis murdering Khashoggi isn't such a big deal because it's like, my dad didn't murder anybody, but he sort of, came right up to the line. What did he do? He was hiring prostitutes to try to entrap his brother in a lawsuit in some way. I mean, the guy was way into his dad was just an outright crook and a wacko and psychopath at that. And so maybe murdering a guy and dismembering him isn't a big deal, or maybe he thought it would all blow over because that's what his dad told him about his conviction, and in a way it sort of did, because I think he's out and running around making deals and like nothing ever happened. So I suppose it's possible that Kushners grow up with the idea that even if you do murder somebody, you get out eventually.
Eventually, if you're white.
Yeah. And you can argue your way down to some sort of a misdemeanor, like, a dismembering without a permit or something. Isn't there some way we can work this out, officer? Is there something I have in my hand, which if I put it in your hand, could make all this go away? That sort of thing.
That's funny.
So...
do you want to hear just one last thing on waves and whatnot?
Oh, okay. Sure, why not?
Yeah, Nate Silver tweeted a few minutes ago, or actually a few hours ago, that the Democrats have a generic ballot lead of 8.5 to 9 points. I'm not sure if people realize how large that is. It's larger than the 94-2010 wave margin, when the GOP won the popular vote by 7, and similar to 2006 when Democrats won by 8, but underperformed in swing districts. Now, that's true. Gerrymandering is a long-time thing, and geographic clustering is a long-time thing. And everyone would agree that 2006 was a wave election, right? Do you agree?
Did people say that? I guess they did, right?
I think they did, particularly because we won all the close Senate races and took the Senate, which was the surprise. We were expected to win the House, and we did. And we were expected to not take the Senate, but we won. Tester won by a point in Montana, and there was another couple of close races we won. McCaskill won a close one in Missouri. We won some close races and got there. But let me just tell you what the number was in 2006 when he was, I think Greg Mitch and Chuck Todd said the magic number is 40. We won 31 seats in the House in 2006.
Yes.
Just saying.
Okay. It is, yeah.
And we all thought that was a way. At least my recollections, everybody thought that was a way.
I think so.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
I don't have it in front
and we
of me,
gave
but
6
it
governors.
seems like that
I think we're going to do about the same or better.
I hope so.
I'm actually someone who's got more optimistic.
Good.
And I want to go back to your Maggie Haberman's "he's a genius" thing. I think he's not a genius. He's actually.
He's not. Yes.
Doing the wrong thing. He's not. As I said, saying that he buried Heitkamp. I guess you can say that him being out there has buried Heitkamp and Kavanaugh, if you want to say those things. But
he will say them. Yeah.
Heitkamp was buried already, mostly, I think. Listen, I hope she comes back somehow. And if she does, I don't think it's going to be because of or in spite of Trump. It's going to be whatever she did locally. If Tester if loses, maybe you would argue that. I think Tester should win, but it's a close race. Maybe he doesn't. McCaskill's in a tight race. Maybe she doesn't. But think about the races that aren't being contested. Wisconsin. Baldwin's up like 11.
Yeah.
Stabenow's up like 14. Pennsylvania, Casey's up 20-something.
Yeah.
What happened to, Trump was supposed to make those states competitive, right? Ohio, Brown's, up 20. Those seats are not in play.
Yeah.
If we hold Missouri and we hold Montana and we hold Florida and we win Arizona, if we hold West Virginia and we hold Indiana.
Okay. Just add more.
Right. Look, this is how tough the board is. People should realize that. But we lose North Dakota.
Yes.
And we also hold Florida. But if we lose North Dakota, but we win Nevada and Arizona, you know what the result will be in the Senate?
Tell me.
It'll be a tie.
Okay.
We don't win the Senate. We win all those races.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's okay.
We pick up one seat. We do not win the Senate. Winning the Senate will take winning in Texas or winning in Tennessee or something like that. It's just not something that you would say, well, they didn't win the Senate, therefore it's a failed night for Democrats. It's a miracle that it's something we can even discuss.
Gotcha. All right, well, we need to head out for our next break. Our last break. Still welcome to hang on if you like. We'll try and round up a couple extra stories, though, after this 2 minutes. We'll be right back. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching KagroX or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Greg tells me he heard the outro music this time, so well, if maybe people at home are able to enjoy this stuff, it's just we're depriving our guests on Skype. But okay, let's see. So we've got our last segment coming up here. Where were we? We had a whole discussion during the break, and I've blanked out now on everything we talked about, except, oh yes, that's right. We were talking about the quite reasonable conclusion, I think, that say among Trump's deplorables, like the Khashoggi story, is, if anything, probably a net plus. Yay, they killed the journalist.
The springboard was me mentioning to you about the body double story. Which
yes,
that you probably talked about at the top of your show.
I heard it from Greg and just gasped in horror. I hadn't heard that, actually.
It's new. They broke it this morning. And in a way, it's not surprising because anybody with a brain knows that MBS ordered that this guy be killed and dismembered.
There can't really be any other explanation for showing up with an assassination team, a forensic scientist, a bone saw, and a body double. Like, I don't know how. There's not only was it obviously prearranged, but in that kingdom, don't forget, kingdom. Who prearranges such things? Who acts on their own? I thought the king would want us to commit 15 security officers to a murder in Turkey of a journalist. Of course not. That was absolutely ordered. Whether it was MBS, I can't positively tell you. It could be, some other MB, somebody else. I don't know. But somebody ordered it, and there are only a very few people who can order such things.
Yeah, I was loath to tweet this, but I always thought they should have gone with the King Henry II defense. That he just sort of was musing out loud.
Yeah,
that
right.
Why won't someone rid me of this pesky journalist?
Yeah.
And his people around him just took it upon themselves to go do it. He said he didn't know they would do that.
Mm-hmm. That's the best possible defense, I guess.
Right? I mean, why don't you go with the King Henry II defense? It was the King Henry II. Yeah, it was. He could Becket. For those not familiar with the story.
Yeah.
Thomas of Becket was a crony of Henry II of England. He was made Archbishop of Canterbury, and he stopped being a lackey to the king and giving the king a lot of trouble in terms of his ecclesiastical, secular relationship between the crown and the church, and apocryphally, supposedly, King Henry said, "Why doesn't someone rid me of this priest?" And somebody did rid of that priest.
Right.
And there was
I'll pay your legal fees.
Right. There was an uproar about it, and And in fact, King Henry II did penance and was lashed and stood outside the church door for a long time. I don't know.
It blew
At
over.
any rate, MBS isn't going to do those things, but I just thought as a PR matter, Maggie Haberman would appreciate my genius here, I think.
Yes.
I think I would have gone with that defense for MBS.
That's
sure, he didn't like the guy and he expressed displeasure, but he never said kill him.
Right. I said kill the column. What's wrong with you?
Kill the column. It was misunderstood.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, he probably could have gotten away with that one.
Put a kilt on him.
We now on the topic, the Saudi topic in general. I just want to at least note the comment that we got from B.J. Hutch, who has some significant experience in the Middle East, having lived there for a while, as I recall. Says, don't forget about Wahhabism, extremism, and Saudi. They can't reject the doctrine that puts and keeps them in power. That is the Wahhabist religious hardliners, essentially the power behind the throne there. Similar to medieval divine right of kings, which we were just talking about, reform is wishful thinking. So it's possible that there just would never be a reformist Saudi king or crown prince. Although I can see the appeal of thinking that there was one. I was going to say that all the pundits and Middle East experts who went in for the PR effort to rebrand the kingdom and to sell MBS as this, visionary reformer, I could see the appeal of it, and I could see that people have thought for a long time, well, when are their Western leanings in terms of their sympathies and the business relationship that they have with the West and the fabulous wealth that they have, and the fact that the wealthiest people and members of the royal family there spend all their time and money in the West. When are they gonna reform things a little bit? And the answer among the punditry, I'm sure they were excited about the possibility of that being now. But the history of the place that we've read and understood in our limited way on the show certainly seems to indicate that power resides with the people who control the clerics there in Saudi Arabia. That's kind of the central issue and central point of governance in that country. And I guess if they shift their alliances, you could just end up with a totally different family as the royals of Saudi Arabia, and then we'd finally get to the point of why I keep calling it Saudish Arabia and reminding people that this, the place is Arabia. The part that's owned by the Saud family is Saudi Arabia, and if the Wahhabists had instead aligned behind the Rashidi family, it would be, the Rashids, it would be Rashidi Arabia, I guess, unless they came up with some other fun name for it. But the Saud family thought it would be funny to name their country, their quote unquote country, after themselves.
They did.
United States of
Kushner,
Trumplandia.
11 minutes ago said the following when asked how even Trump says there have been lies and deceptions from the Saudis. Kushner responds, and I quote, "I see things that are deceptive every day. I see them in the Middle East. I see them in Washington. I see them at home, I admit. Right. Every day we deal with different people who are trying to deceive us in different ways."
True. So stop being so credulous of them, I guess.
I found it remarkable because, one thing is to be deceptive, another is to murder somebody.
Yeah, well, that's true, too.
Maybe I'm crazy.
We see dismemberment everywhere. People are constantly murdering one another. What, we're so great here in this country?
You think we're so innocent? Was Trump's remark.
Right. Well, yeah, so that's their usual line. And, I mean, it's true, but it's, of course, the ultimate in whataboutism. And also, I mean, we all watched you bet it all on the reformist, although I guess to be honest, the pundits say that Kushner bet it all on the reformist image of MBS, and that's not really necessarily true. Kushner bet it all on MBS, but not necessarily because he believed he was a reformer. that was just the cover story. Like, why are you betting it all on MBS? Well, I'm going to make millions and possibly billions of dollars if I do. But if you print that, the whole thing's finished and I don't get the money. So I'm betting on him because he's such a reformer. What makes you think he's a reformer? He has said as much, and he's young, and that's what everybody think young people are. So go with that.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Jared Kushner bet on the Saudis because they loaned him money to pay off his, keep him from defaulting on his loans.
Yes, he almost bet on Qatar, and that didn't work. So now,
right, if Qatar
blockaded.
had come up with the money, he would have bet on Qatar.
Yeah,
and MBS would be in trouble. This is corruption.
Almost,
I mean, I understand the moral outrage, and it's right.
Yes.
But I just feel like the corruption story has been overlooked.
Yeah. I mean, in a way, certainly there's been a lot of discussion of it. I just don't understand. Like, well, it's just one of those things that's like, look, we all understand it's against the rules. It's and there's provisions in the Constitution to prevent it from happening, but we're constantly reminded, okay, so carry it forward. What are you going to do? It says this here in the rule book. I don't want to listen. What do you have to say about that? I don't know. It was supposed to be automatic. You were supposed to be too embarrassed to do this. The Congress was supposed to throw you out.
Yep.
I don't understand what happened. Oh, well, they're in my pocket or getting part of the money or too afraid to do anything else because I will campaign against them and they want to continue to hold their jobs so they know they just remain silent and I won't bother them. That's some weak glue. We're held together by some pretty weak nuclear forces, ladies and gentlemen. Our norms are garbage when it comes to enforcement. And the worst part about it is that the only power we have is to condemn it, and the condemnation generally has to kind of coalesce in our media, and instead they say, this is kind of genius. In a way. Oh, what way? I don't know. Some way. He's winning. He's the president. I have to listen to him. That's genius. I guess. Really? That's it? I mean, that's as far as the discussion appears to go. So I guess so. It has been very weird. Oh, by the way, one of the things I wanted to carry over from the weekend, now that I'm speaking of access journalism, not exactly a news story per se, and there's so many things. I feel like I've ignored so many things. Well, Tuesday we'll catch up on all the things that are like in pocket here that need to be discussed, and you're all waiting to hear more about, I'm sure. But access journalism came up again to me anyway over the weekend as I watched. I was trying to figure out exactly what was troubling me about this, besides the fact that I kind of disagreed. But watching access journalists in particular lecturing people over the weekend, don't bother Mitch McConnell in restaurants. Mitch McConnell
John Harwood
accosted, I guess, was he in Kentucky or D.C.?
I forget.
I don't know.
But yes, he was confronted at a restaurant.
Well, a Cuban restaurant, by the way.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. I don't know if you knew that, and I did see.
Throwing food at him.
Well, they almost did. His food ended up on the floor. I know that much. But I'll have to reach back and find out who tweeted this, but I liked the hashtag that got attached to it, Cuban restaurant crisis. Cuban dinner crisis, that was it. Rather than, but anyway. The lecturing from, what did you say, John Harwood? And others.
Well, John was one of them, unfortunately.
And
he's good, but he was wrong on that.
Yeah, I mean, look, people have... look, I'm uncomfortable with the whole thing in terms of, like, if I'm sitting in a restaurant, do I have it in me to stand up and yell at Mitch McConnell? I might not. By the way, Julian Lobachowski says, that was that one, the Cuban dinner crisis hashtag. I loved
dinner
it.
crisis.
I mean, that was really fun. I like that one. So I share that one around. You can all use the same one there. And let's see. But I don't think I have it in me to necessarily be the guy that stands up and does these things. But I applaud people who brave enough to do it. But I understand initially the recoiling from it. Well, this isn't how we're supposed to do
Rubio, I'll be honest with you. That's one guy who would do it too.
To who?
Marco Rubio.
No, yeah, well, that's possible. But you're a constituent. That makes a difference, I think, in a way. And
it does. I get a right to yell at him.
Yeah. But, right, so people, the journalists were all upset about this. We can't be doing this. Well, look, they yelled at Nancy Pelosi when she went to campaign. And now the Proud Boys were yelling at her. So, yeah, well, they didn't.
Well, you didn't say that then, though, did you?
No. Although this time, now I guess the second time around, they're able to decide that that's wrong. But I guess what really bugged me, aside from the fact that, like, so what? They yelled at Mitch McConnell and his dinner was ruined. And then there were other journalists. I think even Charles Pierce was saying, well, the problem with yelling at people in restaurants is there's other people in the restaurants and you're ruining their dinners. You know what? I don't care.
That's actually the best point I've heard.
I mean, it may be, except, if I were in I'll tell you this, if I were in a restaurant and I saw Mitch McConnell, I was like, damn, I'd like to yell at Mitch McConnell and ruin his dinner. Somebody else did it. I'd say, go, I feel much better now. Yeah, this is a great dinner. Of course, well, what if it was Nancy Pelosi? Well, it wouldn't ruin my dinner, but I wouldn't be happy about it.
I didn't think yelling at Nancy Pelosi was wrong, by the way.
I guess not.
I think the Proud Boys guy doing it is kind of screwed up, but that's okay.
I think, I do feel a little bit differently about constituents. But one of the things that really bugged me about it is that people were pointing out, look, there's so many of these guys hide from their constituents and refuse to have town halls. And, of course, so many of them are in office only because they've been gerrymandered to such an extent that it's impossible to actually measure the will of the people and put their preferred representatives in office. So all of these things taken together, and then to lay on top of it the idea that access journalists in particular would be lecturing people who are supposed to be the ones to have access to their representatives, not the journalists, the constituents, but who are denied access and are denied redress of their grievances and denied a fair opportunity to elect the representatives of their choice, are being told by the people who get and maintain access by saying things like, oh, they're good, they're smart, they're hidden geniuses, and you shouldn't ruin their dinners. And you got to be a sycophant to continue to get access, and it works. And then you use that access to tell people who are denied access, who are constitutionally supposed to have that access and accountability, no, not only do we not really particularly care that you don't have it because the voting right has been diminished, but also if you see your representative and express your frustration to them, that's really, why don't you just write me a note and I'll ask them in an interview, how do you think you got this job? When you write me a note that says this is an outrage and it's corruption and this guy should be drummed out of office and strung up. Okay, all right, I'll carry your message because I have access, because I'm an access journalist. How did you get this job?
I think Connie Schultz had a good tweet in response to Harwood on that. It said, as a journalist and the wife of a politician, she's Sherrod Brown's wife, she says, sometimes I don't like it, but then I think about the power that we have to change things, and I think we got to live with it. That's part of the deal.
Yeah.
And it is. Well, I mean, again, if you want to look at the First Amendment, it says, the right to petition for redress of your grievances.
Right.
And, of course, you got the freedom of expression itself.
Yes. Well, so, this is my petition. Get out of my restaurant.
If someone does something unlawful, arrest them, I guess.
Yeah. I can't really argue with that, but I'm just I don't know. So I want to just come down on that one there too. Does it make me uncomfortable?
That they decided that restaurants are the place. Oh, that's sacrosanct. You know what? Here's what the guy can do if he doesn't want to face that. Eat at your house.
Right. Order in.
Eat at your house.
Yeah, I that's another sort of undercurrent of it, is like sort of restaurant culture and people saying, well, but there are other people enjoying their meals at a restaurant, and like 99% of America. If you're eating at a restaurant,
go to that restaurant, and you won't get bothered.
Right. Oh well, you're ruining my fine dining experience. Right. I'm eating at Five Guys.
Order a pizza, eat at home.
Right. Could obviously be doing that, and I also don't care, and the whole thing was bothersome, and the idea of like, well, it's so hard to get into this restaurant.
I know it's trite, but the response, you know what's really uncivil?
What?
Locking up kids.
Oh, yes,
cages.
right. True, and everybody was out with that one, and it's right. And then, why do you get to eat when they're in cages? And I'm saying, here we're worrying over the murder of a journalist, and it's a bit of a stretch, but aren't you guys basically abetting all of that? How does Jared Kushner come by the gall to be green lighting murders like this, except that he knows that, look, I'm unaccountable to anybody because the entirety of the Congress is petrified of my father-in-law, and he'll campaign against them or say something nasty about them. They'll have to field all sorts of calls in their office if they enforce the emoluments clause of the Constitution or what have you. I'm untouchable. And to the extent that you, Mitch McConnell, are sitting on your ass in a restaurant having a pleasant night out instead of doing something about reining this maniac in, this is on your hands. And so, Jeffrey Dahmer is in a restaurant. Oh, you better not say anything. I'll have what he's having. Don't say that about Jeffrey Dahmer. But, what kind of person don't you say when you see them out in public, you're screwing everything up. This is your fault. People are dying left and right. People are being torn, the families being torn apart. People are now being murdered and hacked into pieces. Hope you enjoy, did you get the unlimited breadsticks? Try the veal, I don't think that was a surprise to anybody that I was annoyed by that or that I would be like, hey, I'm okay with you yelling at people in restaurants. It's going to suck for a while. But I don't know. I just thought I would bring it up. It actually reminded me also of I saw a tweet from I'm trying to remember, Greg Green maybe, and he was pointing out something that Paula Ryder had said, or something similar anyway, in one of the pieces that she had submitted to us a while back about, look, civility is a contract. You've broken your contract by murdering journalists, locking up babies. You got the president out there right now insisting, shadowy Middle Eastern figures are joining this caravan on their way through Mexico. Terrorism is going to come here. And Democrats are the party of crime and terrorism. They want your family killed. They want your family raped. They're pro-invasion from crazy maniacs like MS-13 and ISIS, who are both in this caravan right now. And also there's riots happening in California at the moment, as he was saying in his stupid speech over the weekend. And, you got yelled at dinner. Wow. You've broken the civility contract. We no longer owe you the civility.
Contract,
and
it's over. See, there's
as
no
Greg put it right.
There's no contract with the electorate, and there's no contract between the parties in terms of the institutions. McConnell has busted all that up. Mm-hmm. And I don't care if the media wants to pretend it is. I will say there have been major strides in just dealing with the media nonsense and even Trump's nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
This whole caravan thing, I know people are paying attention to it, and maybe it has some effect, but let's put it to you this way. If you cared about the caravans and that's going to make you vote Republican, you were going to vote Republican anyway. That's true.
Now, I don't think, no new anti-caravan voters at the moment, I don't think.
I just don't see that.
Although there's always somebody who didn't pay attention.
I don't think anyone's paying attention to the civility nonsense anymore.
I hope not.
They're just talking to themselves. And I think this is one thing. You want to look at something that's interesting. Jay Rosen, the media guy from NYU, wrote a piece about the New York Times' new problem. Remember what happens to the New York Times? Advertising has dried up to a great degree in the newspaper business. And subscriber revenue is now, for the New York Times, apparently 60% of their revenue. It used to be, I can tell you, from 1990s when I worked in a media company, I can tell you our biggest profit center was classified ads.
Oh, all right.
If you can imagine.
That's hard
and then
to
it was print ads. And subscription was really not that important. It was to the point that people used to do tricks and cheat on their circulation so they could charge higher ad rates. That's what really mattered. Now, of course, you need to have real subscription numbers that match up to your revenue, so it doesn't really matter in that sense. And the control that what worries the New York Times and why their reporters, according to this is Rosen's theory, why they're so reactive to this is they don't like that readers have this much power over them. They like lecturing to readers as to what they should think.
They do.
They don't like that readers are saying, no, this is what you should think.
Yeah, well, I've always, maybe that's, things have changed. Online has changed everything. Of course, for one thing, the rise of online classified advertising killed off the classified advertising business. Then it started eating up the rest of the advertising model. But one of the things that seems to bother journalists, columnists alike was, it's now easier for them, or perhaps maybe we should construct it backwards. It's harder for them to avoid feedback from readers than it used to be. You used to have to write a letter to the editor, and a week after somebody wrote a lousy column, if you read the letters to the editor, you would see that somebody from, Garden City had criticized you, and you didn't care. But now there's ways to get journalists and columnists feedback quickly and in volume, and they're like, oh, the internet is so uncivil. And this is like an old argument. And 10 years ago, I was saying this thing. Look, everybody has always thought your columns sucked. You just never had the opportunity to hear them before. This feedback was always there. It was just at water coolers. Did you read George Will? Yeah. Oh my God, what an idiot. I hate that guy. He's such a moron. And now it actually gets tweeted to you, and you're like, the internet is a problem. If we could have called you, if you would have been, if phone calls of complaint would have been put through the New York Times switchboard to you 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you would know everybody thought the same things about your columns. It's not online. It's not the internet has made people uncivil. They always thought you sucked. You just didn't know it. It's a communications tool. So now, we can hear more complaints at volume in real time. So I don't know. There's a lot wrapped up in that one, and that wasn't necessarily the biggest story of the weekend or the biggest surprise, anyway, that I would get on the air and use time to say, by the way, I don't care that anybody yelled at Mitch McConnell. But
I really don't.
There were some other issues swirling around
if they
there.
try to get me to care about that, they just missed it.
Yeah, well, keep on doing it. Kudos to those of you who have the guts to do it. I'm sure there are some times where those of you who have the guts to do it think better of it, and it's maybe a good decision. Not all confrontations are net positives, and not all net political positives when taken up by national pundits. It doesn't always come out the way you intended, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it wasn't the right thing to do or within your rights at the very least. But I was struck by, Greg Green's tweet about, look, civility is a contract, and that contract has long since been shattered. The trade that we agreed to make in the Western system of things, in the American system and the great Western tradition was instead of settling things by killing one another or amassing armies and see who amassed the larger army and whatever, we instead amassed voter armies, and you're supposed to, in exchange for accountability to the public, govern in their stead. And when you don't, then you hurt them instead, and then do everything you can to minimize or even eliminate their ability to hold you accountable through the vote. I mean, if I trade in my sword for a vote, and then you take the vote back and I don't get my sword back, there's a problem. And if I happen to be able to forge another sword, you can be sure I'm going to use it to kill you and take my sword back. And I don't know why that's surprising to anybody. But something restaurant? I can't help you with that one.
Again, people are like, you know what? Nobody cares what you have to say on this point. And you just look silly making the point. I guess maybe it helps him with access. I don't know. Maybe it helps him do his reporting job, but it obviously isn't convincing anybody.
No, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot
on
to
any side. Both sides, as they say.
Yes, I guess so. It probably does help him with access. He's, I'm sure, a restaurant guy himself. And remember, this is a different thing. Going to a restaurant is different for this class of people. They say things like, well, you ruined my experience at the restaurant, and it took me 2 months to get that table. I've never gone to a restaurant that, like, can I get in tonight? No? All right, I'm not going to this restaurant. Goodbye. I don't live in that world. I don't make, like reservations ahead of time for places that, you you have to be on a waiting list or anything like that. But I can imagine that's very frustrating to those who had to wait 2 months to get a table. I don't know if that was this kind of place. This was in Louisville, by the way, I am informed. But, you don't want to be disturbed anywhere, even if you're at, the burger joint or whatever. But still, yeah, I was much less than convinced by those things. It's time for us to wrap up, though.
Yeah, just one last thing for you.
Yes.
Jared Kushner on Donald Trump. He's a black swan. He's been a black swan all his life.
Okay, I didn't see that, but I understand the reference. And, yeah, whatever,
black
man.
swan's a bad thing, supposedly?
I don't really know. He doesn't really know. So
apparently he doesn't know.
Yeah, well,
anyway.
Let's murder the black swans and dismember them and see what they think of that.
Okay.
Thanks very much. I don't know. We'll try again tomorrow, and hopefully everything will be okay with our technology as well. Thanks for carrying us through this one. I'm going to spend my off time now looking up that Paula Ryder entry that I was thinking of, where we really did address that civility contract in a way. Now, though, time for you to listen to the No Technical Errors Hour of the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam, who knows how to press all the buttons, and we'll bring you all the stories that we missed so far during our show.
From Daily Coast Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
There's actually an awful lot that we didn't get to today, although a lot of the top stories are pretty much the same. Check this one out. Here's one I really enjoyed, too. In his second half, Trump's next ambassador to South Africa, handbag designer Lana Marks, just happens to be a Mar-a-Lago member, apparently the fourth Mar-a-Lago member to be appointed to an ambassadorship. Hello.